The rain didn't just fall that afternoon, it roared like the sky was breaking apart. Sheets of silver crashed against the office windows, the kind of storm that turned midday into twilight and made even the strongest buildings feel fragile. Cars crawled helplessly through flooded streets, sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, and the wind howled through the city like a warning no one could ignore. Inside the glass tower of Valence Holdings, people rushed to leave early, desperate to escape before the storm worsened. But Armand Kizzer wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about the woman standing alone in the parking lot, soaked, trembling, and completely unaware that the world she controlled inside those office walls meant nothing against nature's fury. If you believe kindness can change lives and that second chances matter, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories That Matter, because sometimes the smallest act can rewrite someone's destiny. Armand had never imagined that someone like her would ever need someone like him. He was a single father who worked as a facility supervisor in the building, a quiet man who kept his head down and his responsibilities close to his heart. Life had stripped away his dreams years ago when his wife passed away, leaving him to raise his 7-year-old daughter Meher alone. Since then, every day had been about survival, about doing just enough to keep the lights on and food on the table, about being both strength and softness for the little girl who believed her father could fix anything. But storms didn't care about belief. When Armand stepped outside to secure loose equipment near the service entrance, he saw her. Zoya Mirza, the CEO of Valence Holdings, stood near her car, her elegant suit clinging to her as the rain soaked through every layer. Her phone was useless in the downpour, her driver was nowhere in sight, and her expression carried something unfamiliar, not authority, not confidence, but fear. The wind slammed a metal gate nearby, making her flinch. The parking lot was already flooding, and her heels sank into shallow water with every step. She tried to open her car door, but the electronic system had failed. Armand hesitated only for a moment. He knew who she was. Everyone did. She was the woman who made decisions that shaped careers, approved budgets that determined livelihoods, and moved through the office like someone untouched by ordinary struggle. Their worlds were not meant to intersect. But humanity doesn't wait for hierarchy. He rushed toward her through the rain, holding his old umbrella against the violent wind. It barely helped, but it was something. Within minutes, the storm worsened. Visibility dropped, and the parking lot became dangerous. Armand realized that getting her home wasn't an option anymore. Roads were flooding faster than expected. His own apartment was just a short walk away. It wasn't a decision he made lightly. It was a necessity. By the time they reached the small residential building, both were drenched. Water dripped from their clothes onto the narrow staircase as they climbed to the second floor. Armand unlocked the door with slightly trembling hands, aware of the strangeness of the moment. Inside, warmth greeted them. His home was simple but full of life, soft sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, toys neatly arranged in a corner, drawings taped proudly onto the walls. The scent of cardamom tea lingered in the air. Zoya looked out of place, yet strangely human in the modest space. He offered her a dry towel and one of his shirts while he turned away respectfully. Meher was at a neighbor's apartment for the afternoon, something Armand silently thanked fate for in that moment. The storm raged outside for hours. Power flickered once but held. Rain hammered the windows relentlessly. Exhaustion slowly replaced adrenaline. At some point, Zoya, wrapped in the unfamiliar comfort of safety, fell asleep on the couch. When she woke up later, sunlight had replaced the storm. And she was wearing his shirt. It was an ordinary cotton shirt, slightly faded from years of washing, carrying the scent of soap and something softer, the quiet warmth of a home built on resilience. Morning light filled the apartment with gold. The storm had passed, leaving behind a city trying to breathe again. Armand was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she stirred awake. The vulnerability in her eyes was not something he had ever seen in the office. Without the armor of power, she seemed human. The day unfolded slowly. She noticed the details, the carefully packed school bag by the door, the neatly ironed tiny uniform hanging beside it, the calendar filled with handwritten reminders. A life of discipline, of quiet sacrifice. Meher returned home later that morning, her laughter instantly transforming the space. She accepted Zoya's presence without question, the way children often do when they sense kindness. For the first time in years, Zoya felt something unfamiliar settle inside her. Peace. Over the following days, the storm became more than just weather in her memory. It became a turning point. Back at the office, she found herself noticing Armand in ways she never had before. Not as an employee, but as a person. She learned about his past through quiet observation and small, unspoken moments, the way he left early only to return later after dropping his daughter at school, the way he worked overtime without complaint, the way he carried exhaustion like a silent badge of honor. And slowly, something began to shift. Zoya had spent years building walls to survive in a world that demanded strength at the cost of softness. Her rise to power had come with loneliness she never acknowledged. But kindness has a way of breaking defenses. A week after the storm, she initiated a review of staff welfare policies. Flexible hours for single parents. Emergency support systems. Educational grants for employees' children. No announcements were made. No credit was taken. Yet Arman felt the change ripple through his life. Time with Meher became easier to manage. The constant tension of choosing between work and fatherhood began to ease. And one afternoon, sunlight streaming through the office windows, Zoya passed by him in the hallway and paused for just a second longer than necessary. Gratitude lived quietly in that moment. Because sometimes saving someone from a storm isn't about sheltering them from rain. Sometimes it's about reminding them they are not alone. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Zoya found herself visiting community programs more often, seeing firsthand the struggles she had once only read about in reports. Her leadership softened without losing strength. Arman never spoke about that day. He didn't need to. The impact lived in the way Meher smiled more freely, in the way the future felt less heavy. And on a bright afternoon nearly a year later, when the city gathered for a community appreciation event organized by Valence Holdings, Zoya stood on stage under the open sky. She spoke about resilience. About unseen heroes. About the power of simple kindness. She never mentioned names. But her eyes found Arman in the crowd. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and comment. Your support helps stories like these reach more people who still believe in kindness. And before we end, we have a special request. Please comment the word kindness if you believe even small acts can change lives forever. Because in a world that often celebrates power, it was a quiet man with nothing but compassion who reminded a powerful woman what truly mattered. And long after the storm faded from memory, the warmth of that single act continued to light lives in ways no one could have predicted.